Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, August the 24th. And tonight, Sunday night, we're going to be chatting with our good friend Frank Burke up in Wisconsin. You know, we always go to Frank when we want to have a good Frank discussion. How is that for a presentation? When we want to have a good discussion about an interesting topic in the news. And there's a great one in the news, and that is the story of Crackel Barrell and the logo that has become quite a controversial story in the United States. So let me say hello to our dear friend, Frank Burke. How's the weather in Wisconsin, Frank?
Today, Silvio, is beautiful. It's like the first touch of fall. And
Oh
we
my
have
gosh.
lots of fluffy clouds, a spot showers here and there. It'll come down and then go away. But the sun has been out. It's about 60, 65, and it couldn't be nicer.
Well, Frank, what can I tell you about the weather down here? We're nowhere near fall, I'll tell you that.
What are you doing? What is it down there?
Well, it's in the mid 90s, and
Oh, my
it's what you expect at the end of August.
gosh.
So we have fall is coming, but it's not coming as soon as it did as it apparently is. It looks like fall is sort of slowly coming down, but the truth is that we start getting. It looks like we're going to have some rain, and that'll bring down the temperatures a bit. But we don't usually get fall until a little bit later.
Uh-huh.
We sometimes our summer when it changes on the 20th of September, which is I guess the formal change, or 21st, whenever it is, it's still sometimes very hot, but it starts to get better. October and November are two of the most beautiful months here because it's
Mhm.
really nice. It's really nice. Just like on the other side, March and April are often very nice too. You have these
Yes.
2 months of the year when the weather, the temperatures are very, very nice here in Texas. So, like I was telling a friend of mine in South America the other day, he was asking me about the seasons up here. And I said, well, we have two seasons. We have very nice and very hot. And that's it. And that's about it. That's about it. Well,
Well, we
Frank,
can.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that in October or late September, we can get what they used to call Indian summer,
I remember.
where you'll have 1 or 2 weeks where it can be in the 80s, really.
I know. And in fact, I'll never forget my first September up in
Mhm.
Wisconsin when somebody brought that up. And because I said to the teacher, you know, what happened to the temperatures? I mean, and she said, oh, this is Indian summer. And I had never heard that before.
Uh-huh.
That was like Indian summer. What are we talking about? What is Indian summer? And then she said it was just an expression that was used at the end of September to explain this change in temperature. So, where does
Right.
it come from anyway? Do you know where it comes from? Indian summer?
I really don't know what the origin of it is, but
Mm,
it goes way back. It's very poetic.
yeah.
And in the New York Daily News and the comic strips, every year there used to be a wonderful old picture of an old man talking to a little boy in a cornfield. Two pictures. The first one, they were corn shocks, if you know what that is, where they
Sure.
put the corn together. And in the second, he was starting to talk about the Indians. And in the
Oh,
second one, the corn shocks became teepees. And he was explaining, the history of years ago when the Indians were here, and how poetic it was, really.
mm.
So,
Yeah. I had never heard in all these years. I have never heard an explanation of it. As I say, I heard it for the first time in our very first September in when we lived in Wisconsin. Our very first September, and the teacher said Indian summer, and I had no idea what she was talking about. I had really couldn't understand at all what they meant by it. But yes,
there's
it
an,
does get.
there's a, I'm sorry, there's a great old Glenn Miller song
Oh
called
yeah,
Indian Summer. And if you haven't,
really?
look it up on the computer. It's
I
really
will.
nice.
So by Glenn Miller. Okay, in
Yes.
fact I'm going to make me a note of that because I like Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller is one of my favorites. Indian Summer. What do you think of that movie that Hollywood movie about Glenn Miller's life? I think who played
Jimmy Stewart, I
Jimmy
think,
Stewart
played.
was, that's
Yeah,
right, yeah. What do you think of that movie? I think it's great.
it's a good movie. It's a very good movie.
Yeah,
I think it, like everything else, it's not totally
sure.
historically correct, but of course they never knew what happened to him, and now they think they do. And what they think happened, his band went on ahead for a concert in Paris,
That's right.
and he was following up with a couple of officers on other missions in a smaller plane. And basically, it was a very foggy day, and when the bombers were coming in after their raids, they would drop the bombs that they had left over in the English Channel. And they think his plane may have been under one of them and just got hit by one of those bombs, and that was it.
Yeah, I've heard that story too. I've heard that story too. That seems to be the most popular explanation these days. Because he was flying, I was watching a documentary one time about this, and he was flying, the plane that he was flying was a Canadian aircraft. I think
Mhm.
it's called Corvair. And it was a Canadian aircraft that he was flying in with a couple of other people. And at the top, in one of those bombers, was a young man who looked out the window, and he saw the Corvair. I think that was the name of but it's Canadian aircraft that he
Okay.
was in, and he saw it flying below, and he didn't make the connection that one of the bombs might hit him.
Hmm.
Maybe it happened later, but anyway, yeah, that seems to be the more popular story these days. But he's technically still missing in action, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable. Well, anyway, I'm going to have to listen to Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller always reminds me of my father, and also Crackle Barrel also reminds me of my father, and that's our topic tonight. Well, it's an interesting story. When my father and mother would visit my sister in the East, they would drive like a lot of people do. And along the way, they would stop at the Cracker Barrel for breakfast. So when they got back, they would talk about their trip, and they would always talk about the Cracker Barrel in Tennessee, where they stopped.
That's
And
great.
this is a story that we would hear many times. And they sold little things at the Cracker Barrel too, and
Yes,
sometimes she
yes.
would bring them back to my kids when they were little. So anyway, time flies, and now they're gone. But every time I see a Cracker Barrel sign here in Texas, like when we drive to Houston, there's a sign there that says Cracker Barrel 6 miles or whatever. It brings me a smile, because it reminds me of my parents. So when I heard that this logo was going down or disappearing, I said, "Oh my God, no, it cannot be true." I didn't. To me, at first, it wasn't a reaction about any particular company policy. It was just the idea that, oh my gosh, that logo is my parents' logo, for at least I associated that with them. And what I thought, Frank, I thought initially that the company was going out of business, and
Hmm.
that's what I thought originally, that the Cracker Barrel was going out of business. So it wasn't that they were changing the logo; they were just going out of business. And then I heard about the logo changing, and I said, "What a shame! What a shame!" So I was very disappointed, and I guess so are lots and lots of people, Frank, who maybe see this as an attack on tradition and culture. And I heard a couple of guys from the South who were on the radio and another channel, and they were saying that going into Cracker Barrel reminded them of their grandmother's kitchen, the
Yeah,
food.
yes, yes.
So I don't know. I mean, what do you make of this, Frank? I mean, how can this company do away with? I mean, with that would be like McDonald's doing away with French fries or something.
Right. It's a ridiculous mistake.
Yeah,
And it's the result of hiring an inexperienced, non-knowledgeable CEO who wants to make a big mark right away before they learn the ropes. And I've seen this happen in everything from heavy industry all the way to today with that, and with Bud Light. with Bud Light. You bring people in who have no idea what they're doing, and it destroys it. If I can begin, I'd like to tell you the story.
Sure.
Really, one of the first times I was aware of it, many years ago now. I have to confess to some age. The the hottest stock on Wall Street was Xerox. And there are some companies that come up like Apple with an invention or a product that sells itself. It's the only one there. It's a technology people need. They love it, and sales go through the roof. IBM was like that. Polaroid, you remember many years ago. You may not remember it, but that was the case with Xerox. And I guess it's human nature, but the president of the company always takes a lot of credit, whether or not he was that much a part of what happened. But the president of Xerox at that time, and I'm not demeaning him in any way for what he did at Xerox, was a man named Arch McArdle. And Arch McArdle was hired by International Harvester, which is the maker of farm equipment, the big red Farmall tractors, the McCormick Deering things. It was the direct descendant of Cyrus McCormick's Reaper, going all the way back, some of the first revolutionary farm equipment. But as time went on, that area became a little more competitive. So in any case, they hired Arch McArdle. So the first thing Arch McArdle did when he came in was to say, I don't want any of these little mom and pop dealerships. They're all over the place. They may sell 1 tractor, 5 tractors a year, and that's all. If you want to be a dealer, you're going to really put up a gigantic showroom, and you're going to have a full product line, which is very expensive, by the way. If you have a full line, how many times, are you always going to be selling the big combines? Whatever. But in any case, that's what he did. And he canceled out a lot of these small mom and pop dealers. He canceled most of them. Well, what he didn't realize, because he didn't know the business and he didn't know the customers, was the fact that even today, you will find a lot of old Farmall tractors and old equipment being used. It may not be they may be using a huge John Deere with 4-wheel drive and over 1,000 horsepower, but they clean out the barn, they haul the hay with an old 1948 Farmall tractor. So what does that mean? It means that they needed parts, that the parts business was a major contributor to profits at International Harvester. And by cutting off all these small dealerships, no, they weren't selling a lot of tractors or combines, but they were selling a heck of a lot of parts, especially in the smaller rural areas. So the company went into all kinds of trouble financially. And a lot of the big showrooms were closed because nobody could afford it. You couldn't afford what they call the floor plan, the interest on all of this equipment.
Right, because you're financing all that. It's like the same thing in the car business. You're financing everything on the floor.
Right.
Is being financed, so you got to move it. You got to move it at a certain time. Yeah.
And as you well know, in most of this country, the farming business is somewhat seasonal. So you get into the winter and you're not going to be selling a lot of tractors and plows.
No.
But anyway, that's what happened. And it happened because an individual with no experience in the industry, who really didn't understand the customer base or what the profit streams were into the company, made a terrible mistake.
Right.
And that kind of thing is ego most of the time.
Yeah.
It's somebody who say, hey, I'm going to change it all. I'm going to make this new. This is the way it's going to be. Like with Cracker Barrel because they're not just changing the logo. One of the great things about those places was how what it looked like inside. It had a very
Hmm.
old-fashioned, almost a country
Right,
store feeling. And
right,
now, they're painting everything white and putting up more modern displays of, artwork, things like that. It's not what it was.
right,
And that's not what people want when they go into that kind of establishment.
right,
So you're looking at something that could really, if they don't turn it around quickly, that will kill it
right.
because that family restaurant business is very, very competitive. And you've seen a lot of TGI Fridays close. Applebee's has closed a lot of things. Ground Round has virtually gone out of business. So there's not a lot of room to fool around when
Right.
you're in that business.
Well, over the last couple of days, as I said before, my memory of Cracker Barrel was my parents.
Yes.
Whenever I thought about Cracker Barrel, that's what I was thinking about. The fact that my parents loved it. And when I was with my parents one time traveling with them, and we stopped at a Cracker Barrel, you kind of get the impression that the audience or the customers were a little older, like
Hmm.
my parents,
Yes.
who were stopping there for more than just food.
Yeah.
There was something else that they were getting there when they were stopping there. It wasn't just the food. I mean, you could eat the same thing at another restaurant, but it was
Right. Right.
a certain atmosphere. But over the last couple of days, I've been listening to some people talk about Cracker Barrel, and I get the feeling that there were, I mean, I didn't know this, but that there were a lot more young people that would go there, particularly younger people who wanted to like connect with their grandmother.
Yeah.
Because apparently that's the big charm of Cracker Barrel, the fact that it's your grandmother's southern kitchen kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And a lot of young people would go there and have the gravy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like a way of sort of going back to
Yes.
your it's sort of like for me going to a Cuban restaurant or something like
Hmm.
that. You
Yes.
you
Very much
you
so.
you relate to food that you associate with your past. And what I don't understand when they make these changes, why the way they made the change is what makes me makes me worry that this was driven by something other than just making it more different. First of all, they take away out of the picture, out of the logo, they take away the gentleman sitting there, the farmer kind of reference, I
Right.
guess,
Right.
the older guy sitting, next to the cracker or whatever. If they had done away with everything, including the name, and just started from scratch, it would make more sense. But it seems like they're targeting a certain part of the image of the logo. They're not just how can I say, they're taking out something. And if they're going to redo the restaurants, like you're saying, I didn't know that, I think they're going to run into a lot of shock
Oh,
because
tell me about it.
there's a lot of people who go there just because those places look like that, Frank.
Right. Well, and it's one of the things about Cracker Barrel, and I'm not a devotee. I think there's only one in uh, this area in Wisconsin, and it's fine. It's I nothing against it, it's very good. But the type of food they serve is what you would call vernacularly comfort food. It's heavy food. It tends to be heavier. It's not health food. You don't go into Cracker Barrel for a smoothie and a kale sandwich. You do not.
No.
You go in there for something that is much more hearty. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I think a lot of older people like it. Because in surveys I've read, and we have worked with the food service industry, uh, one of the things older people like are larger portions, and they take some home. And they may get 2 or 3 meals out of the meal that they bought at Cracker Barrel.
Hmm.
And, it's that kind of thing. It's heavy food. It's not the kind of thing you want to eat in a bright fluorescent atmosphere pastel atmosphere.
Right.
You really want to, it's part of it. The food and the atmosphere contribute. It's part of it.
Right.
And without the other, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work.
Well, that was the impression I had when like I said, I went there one time with my parents. All of the other references that I have to Cracker Barrel are hearing stories of my parents. There was one in Tennessee that they used to love. I mean, I'm sure that there's others too, but the one in Tennessee is the one they kept talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just convenient. Probably it was convenient for them, but there was one in Tennessee that they used to love. And I think they even brought back some cups, some coffee cups
Yes. Yes.
that they used to sell there, and maybe a T-shirt. I don't know, something, because I think they brought back something for our kids. But there was something about that place. And when I went back with my parents that one time that I was with them, that we went into Cracker Barrel, I have to be honest, the food was okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was the best breakfast I ever had. Although what was really nice, though, was the bread. They had a really nice cornbread, and I guess that's very traditional of the South,
Yes, definitely.
And the biscuits were very traditional too, and the gravy. I thought the breakfast was okay, but I mean, it wasn't the best I've had. But I think the charm of that place, Frank, is that when you're going on the highway these days, and you look at the different exits where they have restaurants, everything is a chain restaurant these days. There are very few places on the highway that are uniquely of that area.
Yes.
And for example, here, if you're going from Dallas to Houston, just about every exit, you've got a fast food place. We have something here in Texas called Buc-ee's. And Buc-ee's is a place that is like super popular here. Everybody has to stop at Buc-ee's. It's not like Cracker Barrel, but it's very traditional in a different way. And they have all kinds of different foods, and you can stop there. And the bathrooms are very clean. That's one big attraction of it. But everybody, I mean, whenever we're on the road, we always stop at Buc-ee's because you have to in Texas. You have to stop at Buc-ee's, otherwise they don't think you're in Texas.
Right.
But anyway, just about every other place on the road, it's the same thing. It's the same sausage place you can eat here in Dallas. It's the same chicken place you can eat in Dallas. It's the same pizza place. So they're all the kinds of chain restaurants that all look the same.
Well,
but Cracker Barrel doesn't fit that mold. They look different, Frank.
Yes, but I will tell you something, and it applies to Cracker Barrel and to other places too. When I was starting in business, and this goes back, it's like the 1970s, and it was the height of the franchising era. And McDonald's and a lot of other, there are a lot of companies that you don't hear about anymore, Roy Rogers, etc., Minnie Pearl's Chicken.
I haven't heard that name in a long time. Roy Rogers. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. You may confuse me with the old timer sitting next to the Cracker Barrel. But
you've got a few memories, just like I'm sure that old timer does.
Right. But at that time, they were trying to explain the popularity of McDonald's and things like the foundation of Holiday Inn. And what was said was, well, for people who are traveling, they like McDonald's because it's totally predictable. You can go into one diner in one place and it's great. Go into the next place, there are bugs on the counter and it's terrible. But with McDonald's, you always know what you're getting and your menu. And that was the story. They said, but then they did market research and they discovered that 85% to 90% of the customers going to any given McDonald's came within a 6-block radius.
Wow.
So what has happened to these restaurants, and what's happened, I'm sure, to your Buc-ee's and to Cracker Barrel, is that they develop a following. They develop a rather loyal group. from an area, and they say, hey, let's get together for breakfast every Saturday morning, or the girls are coming in to have lunch on Wednesday afternoon at 1:30. And that's very important to the customers, and it's what keeps the restaurants going.
Mm-hmm.
If you try and build something based on travel through, you're never going to work. It's never going to work, and I'll tell you why. Because unless you have millions of dollars to establish a reputation coast to coast, nobody's going to know who you are.
Right.
Nobody's even going to know who you are. And that is why it's very important for any restaurant to be very careful of their customers and their employees. Now, granted, a lot of fast foods, high school kids, they have a great big employee turnover. But one of the problems Cracker Barrel has is that this new CEO wants to cut employee wages and benefits. And
wow.
that's terrible because, people go in, they develop a relationship with a waiter, with a server, I should say. That's an old term, waiter. A server or a cook or someone, and it's, hi, Mr. Canto, gonna have the usual today, gonna have that special breakfast.
That's right. That's right.
And
you're right.
So you have to take that into account with your customers. And it's like, the another great mistake, Target.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, Target was very, very popular with young people. And in fact, I can remember we have two grown sons. At the time they got married, which was probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, one of the popular gifts was get us a Target gift card because they were buying all kinds of things for the family. Well, eventually, of course, this was Target's one of its customer bases, and these people had kids. Okay, so it became natural. Okay, yeah, that's something you get at Target. Let's go down to Target and do that. So what did they do at Target? They bought into the DEI woke thing, and they established these trans and gay departments with all kinds of things that were endorsing that lifestyle. Now, I'm not going to make a comment about the lifestyle. It is what it is. There are people who, find that that's what they are. But for a lot of people who aren't, they didn't want the kids, Mommy, what's that?
Right.
What's that about? And it really alienated a lot of the customer base because it said, you don't know who we are.
Right.
Now, that would work in an urban area where you would have a large percentage, a large population of people who are gay or transsexual. But I don't think, that's a national company, and it's not going to work in certain other areas.
Right. Here in the Dallas or in the North Texas area, more specifically, the problem they ran into, Target particularly, was that they put those products or those, whatever it was, swimsuits or whatever, right as you were coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the mother coming with her kids to get stuff, and that's the first thing she sees. If they had put it in the back somewhere or in another more private section or out of the main street, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But let me look to the future a little bit of Cracker Barrel. A couple of things that I've seen in the news, and I don't know how permanent this is going to be or whether it's just a reaction and it'll fade away. They took some pictures of some restaurants. They were empty. Completely empty. I mean, completely empty. And like they were saying, normally it's full of people and there was nobody there. Yeah. And then another is the stock dropped or something. Now that could be temporary. That could change. But do you think that this is going to be like Bud Light where it ends up, whoever it was at Bud Light who made the decision was fired or at least given another job or whatever? Do you think that that's what's going to happen here? That there's going to be repercussions, because you get the feeling from the reaction that this is touching a nerve in the country. I mean, that
Yes.
there's just a lot of people saying, hey, we don't like this. And why are you messing with something that's working, kind of thing? And it was fine. Unless, Frank, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe you do, unless the company was having financial problems and they were, gonna close because they were losing money or whatever. And then they said, well, let's just do something desperate to change. So I don't know. Was the company having financial problems? Do you know?
That I don't know. I can't answer that, but I can say this. They had better change,
Right.
and they had better change very fast, because before they redo all of their restaurants, because if they don't, they're going to be losing. The stock price drop was catastrophic.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
It was not just, oh, it's down a couple of points. It was like a ridiculous figure, as to how much the price dropped. Let me tell you a story about a great recovery, though. Okay. Some years ago, and you might remember this, Coca-Cola decided that they were going to change their product.
Right.
New Coke.
Yes.
And everybody said, oh, no, you don't. I wouldn't feed this Coke to my dog. I don't want it, whatever. So they went back and they said, sorry, we were wrong. You're right. Here's Coke Classic. We'll still keep the new stuff for those who want it. And it was a very brilliant marketing move, because they ended up getting more shelf space for both the traditional Coke and the new Coke. And shelf space is essential to success in the retail market. So what Cracker Barrel needs to do is to do the same thing and say, take the old man in the chair and say, he's back.
He's back, right.
Come home to Cracker Barrel.
Right.
And, do it even more so. Because, people get used to some things. There are some things where people say, hey, I want to change. I'd really like to see a change. But there are others where, I don't want it to change.
Right.
There's some things I want to depend on. Now, sometimes you can't help it. And it really does, in the end, have a poor effect. I can remember, I keep saying this, I can remember, going back to the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, before there was, while all the stuff was coming up about automobile safety, a Mercedes-Benz looked markedly different than any other car. A Lincoln looked different. A Cadillac looked different.
Right.
And
the Oldsmobile looked different. Remember, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you had the Cadillac, the Oldsmobile, the Buick. They were basically the same car, mechanically, that is, but they all looked different. I mean, so you had Buick families, you had Oldsmobile families, you had Cadillac families,
right?
And then you had Chevrolet, but they were, I mean, the chassis, whatever they call it, was the same, but an Oldsmobile Delta 88 was different than whatever the Buick Park Avenue was or whatever, but they were completely different looking cars. So you could drive the two of them, and even though they were the same chassis and engine, you were driving a different car, Frank.
Yeah. And for people, though, the Mercedes and the Cadillac, they were status symbols. They, above and beyond their ability to perform, granted, and both were high quality automobiles, very high quality, but they set you apart because they looked different. One of my favorite ads, and I come from that business, for Mercedes at that time, was a picture of, very simple, just one-page ad of a Mercedes parked in a driveway, and a guy in a sweater, looked like an average guy, and he's kind of looking at it, and just one headline: I keep telling myself it's only a car.
That's right.
And that says it all. But now look at what
you were in the advertising business. If I may just add this story, My favorite ad for a car, I guess this was in the 70s, was Chrysler New Yorker. They had a fantastic ad, even though I never owned one. But there was a fantastic ad for the Chrysler New Yorker. And I guess that car competed maybe with the Cadillac or the Buick, but it was such a great ad. The idea that I remember the ad, it was like you were very special because you
Right.
drove a Chrysler New Yorker. I remember that.
Yes, yes, I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
beautiful.
it even came into the language. And I'll give you two examples of it. One was, it's the Cadillac of such and such.
Exactly,
And you don't
exactly.
hear that anymore
No,
because
no,
all these cars, more or less, look very similar.
they
So
do.
do you really stand out if you're driving a Cadillac or a Mercedes? Hardly.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not that different.
I mean, certainly, I mean, the Lincoln Mercury doesn't even exist anymore to my knowledge. I think they've done away with Lincoln Mercury. They still have
It's
maybe,
Mercury. Still have
yeah,
Lincoln, but Mercury's gone. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. But Mercury was an upgrade from Ford. At
Yeah.
least that's the way I saw it. I mean, if you bought the Mercury, uh, you know, you had the Ford Taurus, and then you had the Mercury Sable, I think,
Right.
and it was supposed to be, you know, a more, I guess, a nicer car if you bought the Mercury.
Hmm.
But but let me. Do you believe that the old man is coming back and that this company is gonna sort of say, "Look, I'm sorry, we did away." Almost like Bud Light. I mean, Bud Light. I'm not sure whatever happened to Bud Light. I don't know if they ever came back. But do you
They
think?
never came. The sales
You,
never came back.
yeah, Cracker Barrel, because I have to believe, Frank, that my mom and dad were not the only people
No.
traveling that specifically stopped at Cracker Barrel for breakfast.
Right. Right.
I have to believe that millions of other people do the same in a year's time, and that those people, I mean, my mom and dad are not here, but they'd be furious if they did away,
Yeah.
if they were here and saw that logo change. So I've got to believe other people are reacting that way, Frank.
Absolutely. And they better bring it back, or they're really playing. They're shooting the company down. It would be ridiculous to do it. You mentioned Buc-ee's. I lived in Ohio for a time, and there was a chain of restaurants, Jimmy Dean's sausage restaurants,
I remember that.
and they were all done over. They were really nice atmosphere. It was kind of a semi-Western rural feeling, really in touch with the farm background, you know. And I'll tell you, on a Sunday morning, it was an Ohio tradition to go to breakfast after church at Jimmy Dean's. And there were lines all the way out to the street.
Right.
And if you fooled around with that, you would be crazy. You would be absolutely nuts
Yeah.
because it's it's a formula for success. Now, can you change some things? Sure. But it has to be an evolution, not a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, they might have a breakfast menu as opposed to the biscuits and gravy and all that stuff. They could have a healthier kind of choice, but don't play it up as that. It'll be what it is. People will know it when they see it,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll know it's lighter. But the light breakfast, or for if you've got a meeting coming up and you don't want to eat too much, that's fine. But it's okay to evolve, but not to revolutionize,
Right.
especially for a brand like that.
Right. Not to mess with the logo that identifies. I mean, that logo is like the Cadillac, the little thing on the front, in the
Yes,
Cadillac. I mean, you see that, you know what it is. And the Mercedes Benz do the same thing.
yeah,
Or remember the old RCA Victor, with the phonograph. Yeah.
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
those are things that, that you shouldn't mess with. And I think part of the problem, Frank, and then I'll say this and we'll have to wrap it up. But I think one of the things that happens is that you have this idea that, and maybe happens to many CEOs or maybe people coming into business, that you have to change things.
Yeah,
Instead of saying it's working, leave it alone. No, they
right.
have to change it because
Yeah,
they have to put their signature on it. Well, sometimes, I mean, if the company's going under, you have no choice but to change it. But if the company's doing fine, then just listen, enjoy the ride,
Yeah.
and just enjoy it and tinker with it a little bit, but keep it going, Frank.
If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Exactly.
And one quick thing about the RCA symbol, his master's voice, and the dog with the phonograph.
Yes.
A number of years ago, they tried to do away with that. The dog's name was a real dog, by the way. It's Little Nipper is his name.
Oh, wow.
And the original concept of that, an artist in London by the name of Francis Barrett owned Nipper. And he did a painting that showed what you're familiar with, the phonograph and Nipper. And in the background was a coffin. And it was the dead master.
Oh.
And when RCA at that time, the gramophone company, realized the value of that trademark, they had to pay him to paint out the dead guy. But that was so well known. Some years ago, back in the 1980s, I think, they tried to change it. And they had a very modernistic looking RCA.
Yeah, they do.
And the public outcry was so great, they brought it back.
Yes.
And it was very wise to do it, because when they were making things for the space program, they had a great ad, and it showed Little Nipper, a fox terrier, and a pup looking at the stars.
Right. I remember that.
Beautiful.
I remember that. Yes, beautiful. I remember
That's
that.
Evolution. Yeah.
Well, my favorite Nipper, I didn't know the dog's name, but Nipper and the phonograph was an Elvis Presley single.
Uh-huh.
Blue Suede Shoes.
Yeah.
that I got my hands on that single many years later, because it came out, I think, in 56, and I didn't get my copy until like 66.
Sure.
But I remember finding that single somewhere, and I bought it. And there it was, Elvis Presley. On one side, it was Blue Moon, and on the other side, it was Blue Suede Shoes. And there was that little phonograph and the dog, and I just fell in love with that. And I said, I hope they never change that.
Yes.
And then they did. They made it generic. It was totally different, and it was so awful. I'm glad they brought it back.
Well, RCA, that catalog used to, when there were exclusive contracts with singers, they had virtually the best of classical music, popular music, jazz, big band. They had a special big band label called Bluebird. And, it was just a marvelous profit-making machine.
I bet. Yeah, I bet it was.
And their exclusive contracts went from Enrico Caruso at the turn of the century all the way to Elvis.
How can you lose money when you've got Enrique Caruso, Elvis Presley, and Paul Anka?
Right.
I mean, on the same label. You almost have to burn it up to lose money. I mean, all you have to do is release music and you're going to make money.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely stunning, all the artists that they had. Well, Frank, I'm going to make a prediction that sometime in the future, when you and I talk about something else, like maybe the Christmas time we get together, or Thanksgiving, or something like that, like we always do, that Crackel Barrell will be back. The logo will be back, and we can bring back a part of America that all of us cherish.
Yes, and Silvio, if I were fortunate enough to be near you or you near me, the only appropriate thing would be to go to Crackel Barrell for breakfast tomorrow.
Listen, as I told you, every time I think of that store or that restaurant, I think of my parents, because they were the biggest fans of Crackel Barrell in the planet, and how Cuban grandparents would become fans of Crackel Barrell is the American dream, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, why they fell in love with Crackel Barrell is, I guess, part of the American dream, or their dream, or whatever, but they loved it. And so every time I think of Crackel Barrell, I think about them, Frank.
Yes, and you should. It was a welcoming atmosphere. And I think
Yeah,
that's what
that's true
America
too.
is about. It was real
That I think
America.
that's a wonderful point, because that's exactly how I felt when I
Yeah,
walked into the store. When I
yeah,
walked in, I keep saying store, but restaurant. That's
yeah.
exactly how I felt, that this was a nice place, and I can understand why so many people wanted to go there, regardless of the quality of the food or whatever. Well, Frank, I want to thank you so much for joining us on short notice, and I think this worked out really well. I had a lot of fun, and thank you for your input
Same
as
here.
always.
Well, thank you, Silvio. And as we say, God bless us, all of us, the country, your audience, your
Yeah.
family, and Cracker Barrel too.
Wasn't that Tiny Tim who said that? But
Yes, God
all
blesses
right.
everyone.
All right. There
And
you go. And yes, and let's include Cracker Barrel from now on.
absolutely.
Yeah, let's include that one from now on. Thank you, Frank. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thanks again, Silvio.
My pleasure. Our good friend, Frank, I almost said Frank Barrell, Frank Burke up in Wisconsin. We always enjoy chatting with him about issues like this, like Cracker Barrel. And why would you mess with that logo? I mean, it's crazy. When I heard about this, I couldn't believe it. I mean, why mess with a logo that brings so many people together? And I just quickly repeat the story of my parents who used to love it. They used to love it, stopping there when they were driving. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.